So today we're talking with Nick Farr, the winemaker of Wine By Farr in Geelong, southern Victoria. Wine By Farr is the Winery of the Year for the Real Review 2022 Top Wineries of Australia. Congratulations, Nick, and welcome to the Real Review.
Thank you, Huon. It's a great honour to be awarded the gong for #1 this year, the Real Review. It's perhaps something my father hasn't achieved, so perhaps means a little bit more to myself.
That's a nice line, yeah. There's not much that Gary hasn't achieved, and I was going to ask you first up, being the son of a famous winemaker, your parents, Gary and Robin Farr, established Wine By Farr. What's it like following in his footsteps? Because they're pretty big footsteps.
Yeah, he was definitely arrogant. Like when we launched Far Rising and it had Son of a Gun on the back label, I think that spoke volumes of what he expected from everyone else around him. But I haven't found it daunting at any stage. I couldn't have someone that is more supportive in what I've wanted to do and where I've wanted to take the brand. And it's been side by side. He may not be here on a daily basis or perhaps show that much interest at certain times of the year, but he's certainly the person that I can call on at any moment to truly understand what I want to do in a vineyard or what a wine should or shouldn't look like at a certain stage of the year. So mum and dad, both quite exceptional, that they were just willing to say, okay, it's your turn, and not really delve into some of the perhaps more complicated decisions that are made during harvest or bottling or any other process that goes on during the year.
It's quite remarkable, really. People who achieve the sorts of things that Gary has achieved, he's obviously got a big ego, and often that gets in the way. But it appears that he's a big enough man to stand back and say, you take over now. I have confidence in you. You're the guy.
His ego is certainly there, but it's an ego that he feeds off and that he checks himself. He is only interested in what he can achieve and what no one else around him will achieve or what other people are doing. He's very solely purposed on and how he can make better wine from his piece of dirt. And it's definitely resonated with me and my approach for now over 20 years of being able to be part of Far Rising and By Farr. The approach certainly hasn't changed, and the team members that we have here, in a way, have bought into everything that the Farr family has to offer. And we certainly like to treat each of our employees as family members. And I think it speaks volumes of us never really having an employee leave other than retiring. So we've been extremely lucky with the people that we've had come through, but Dad and I certainly feed off these people to reinvigorate with either interns from overseas or someone, Matt, for instance, who's just come from hospitality. We've got Steph that's just finished Dookie Ag College. Really pleased with the mixture of personalities and experience that we've got in the team at the moment.
That's terrific. Well, I can see on the wall behind you, on the laboratory wall, you've got those beautiful maps of Burgundy, Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune, either side of you there, which reminds me that By Farr is probably one of the most Burgundy or French-influenced wineries in the country. Your dad's and your own trips to Domaine du Jacques, of course, are ongoing. To what extent do you look to the old world for your benchmarks and for your inspiration, and to what extent do you look to Australia? Do you follow Australians?
I think we're always looking forward. That's probably the point I want to make first. But when your dad in the late 70s, early 80s, it was where was Gary to look? And when Dad started with Stuart Hooper to plant Bannockburn vineyards and trying to understand what was the grape variety that was going to best suit the region when it was a marketplace that was very Cabernet and regionally eccentric, to plant Pinot in Geelong, sure that there was history from the Swiss 50, 60, 80 years ago, but I think Dad was very much okay, who is making the best Pinot Noir in the world? Okay, I need to talk to them. And he wrote over 100 letters to different Burgundians asking if he could visit. And Jacques Cess, who isn't a true Burgundian, wasn't born into Burgundy, was the only one that responded. And that's where our relationship started with the Cess family. We certainly value that relationship very, very much. And I'm hoping to take my children there over the next couple of years. As I was taken and I was dumped into the village school, didn't do me much good as my French is horrible. But we aspire to anyone that makes great Pinot around the world. And if we look at wines that have come out of Oregon, like we love Christum, Elk Cove, some of these producers. We're certainly looking at what people are doing in Martinborough. We think that's a great region. But it's still producers around the world that make a stylistic wine that is perhaps similar to ours and looking for that finesse, yet using whole bunch fermentation. So it's certainly in the past, Burgundy was huge in Dad's aspirations of what can I do in Australia to reach this level. We certainly don't think we've ever hit that level of Burgundy, but now it is certainly, this is what we are capable of. Our vineyards now have greater maturity. Who else around the world is making greater Pinot, and how can we truly express more about what our dirt is capable of?
Yes, and I'd imagine that during the COVID years you've had, you would normally have stagiaire workers coming in from France and other countries perhaps to help during vintage and harvest time. You probably haven't had much of that this year, last couple of years.
Well, no, we haven't. We missed a couple of years, but we had Louis Billard, who actually had worked with Christophe Rumière and Domaine Romani-Conti, and he was a huge influence just on the team, because we had this young team, for them to better understand what it's like to be in Burgundy and the ore that is Burgundy at harvest time. So we love introducing these guys and showing them as much Australian wine as we possibly can, and lots of blind tastings, trying to catch them out. And they're really struggling, I think, the last couple of years to get their head around where their seasons are heading with these warmer, drier years that they're having, yet we seem to be having cooler, finer, more acidic years. So it's a really interesting conversation around the dinner table about where perhaps Australian Pinot is and where Burgundy is at the moment.
Yes. Of course, we have a Burgundy winemaker recently invested in Bas Philippe, Jean-Marie Fourier. Do you welcome that sort of thing? Do you think there'll be more of that cross-pollination in the future?
I think that there's already been some in New Zealand, so I'm not surprised that the French are sort of looking over their shoulder. The prices of Burgundy land is too much, so they're either heading to Beaujolais or to the US. US seems to be a greater fit because the personalities of Burgundy are so well received in the US, and I think that the marketplace is so large for that sort of quality and that prestige. But yeah, it's great that I think there's also another company that's also involved in that purchasing of Bas Philippe, who purchased a lot of our wine through Singapore, and it's certainly escalated the reputation of Australian wine. So why is there someone from Burgundy coming to Australia to make wine? What have they seen that we're missing out on? So I think it will certainly open more doors and more markets for us, or more prestige about our wines, which is great.
Totally agree, and you make some very good points. The other point, I suppose, is that it's the Southern Hemisphere has an appeal because that way they can do 2 vintages in a year. So bring it on, bring it on. But look, Nick, you're at the top this year. You're number one. What can you're obviously onwards and upwards at Wine by Farr. Things get better. Vines get more mature. You get better at what you do in the vineyard. Where can you go from here? What do you think the future holds?
I think we're always looking forward to what else we can do in the vineyard. We're always conscious of what the next season will bring and how we can have the most balanced, healthy fruit we possibly can. But vine maturity, I think, is certainly starting to show through in our wines. I think there's a natural refinement about our wines. I think in the early days there perhaps was a bit more manipulation of the style that we wanted people to view of our wines, but we'll never stop challenging ourselves, and we're never happy. We're certainly half empty people, but we're very private and we have there's a sense of this is our place and these are our wines, whether people like them or not. We're going to continue making the way we are. We're not looking abroad too much about what else is happening in our peripheral vision, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a glass empty person too, actually. We're looking forward to getting some By Farr Chardonnay in that glass. It's a bit dry. So we look forward to seeing you at least one of our upcoming Top Wineries exhibitions. Nick Farr, winemaker, Wine By Farr from Geelong, Victoria, Winery of the Year for the Real Review 2022. Thank you for joining us today. Congratulations, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Right. Thanks very much, Huon.